guys, welcome to episode 9 of Hello Church Season 4. I'm David Krausen.
I'm Mike Hernandez.
And we're excited to talk to you today about creating, maintaining healthy church family culture,
Awesome.
Growing a healthy church. We said this at the beginning of this season.
That's right.
That healthy things grow.
That's right.
We believe that wholeheartedly. Healthy
Yes.
things grow. I have an interesting story about healthy things. I can say, and you can tell I don't have any green thumbs. I'm terrible at growing just about anything.
That's funny.
We recently planted some sod at our house.
Okay.
Had, put down the sand and leveled it all out and had the pallets of sod brought in and laid them out in the brick pattern, did the whole thing. It's beautiful emerald zoysia grass. It is gorgeous stuff.
Nice.
Or it used to be.
Oh, no.
Until I got a hold of it. Now, I watered it and did the whole thing like, you're supposed to, how it's
Sure.
kind of growing together and seeing less lines. It was looking really good, except there were some weeds popping up, and it's normal. Weeds come up in grass. And I thought, I could go out there and pick them. And I did a few, and I'm like, but they're probably going to come back. So I went to the Home Depot, I guess is where I went, and I bought some weed and feed.
All right.
I don't suggest buying weed and feed unless you know what you're doing. I bought weed and feed, and I bought this little thing. You put it in, you sprinkle it out, and then you water it, and you're supposed to sit back and let it do its thing.
Sure.
I guess maybe I put too much or didn't water enough or watered too much. I don't know. Come to find out, I burned my grass.
Oh, no.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Nah.
Burn your grass. I
Sure.
thought I was doing a really good thing for my grass.
Yeah.
Like I'm feeding it.
Yeah,
and
weed
I'm
and feed,
weeding
man.
it.
Yeah.
Hello, this is a good thing.
Right.
No, I got a hold of a friend because, I looked online and was like, it's turning orange. Okay. What I read said it's a fungus. So you should buy a fungicide and you should spray the fungicide on the grass, which I did.
Yeah.
And it's like, it should work within 24 hours. It didn't do anything. Nothing was changing. It was just getting worse. And so I sent a picture to a friend of mine who has a lawn care company, which I should have done in the first place. And he was like, bro, stop putting stuff on your yard. You don't have a fungus. You burned it.
Oh, no.
I'm like, what do you mean? I burned it. Yeah, you burned it. So he's like, you need to aerate it, and you need to. He gives me these instructions for breathing new life back into my yard.
Gotcha.
And so I bought these things you
that'll
strap
preach.
onto the bottom of your shoes. They've got these spikes on them. It looks like a medieval torture device. And I'm walking all over my yard and aerating it, right? I'm walking in a pattern, so I make sure I cover the whole thing. And my legs were killing me when I was done with it. But I did it. And I was like, so do I need to do this again? He's like, no, you did probably once every 6 months to do that. But now you need to switch to this watering pattern. And he provided that. And sit back and just breathe. It's going to be okay. You'll get your grass back.
Gotcha. So you're still hoping.
I'm still hoping to have green grass.
all
Right
right.
now, it's still brown. And it seems to be getting worse. But there's spots that seem to be looking better. There's still some green there. I didn't kill the whole thing. So I have hope.
Gotcha. Well, that's a lot like our churches, man. We have hope. Our churches are going to come out of this fungus that we're in.
Yeah.
Or these dry spots.
Yeah, these dry spots. If you feel like you're dealing with a church situation right now that is just taking over the whole thing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's some toxins. Maybe it's gossip. Maybe it's unhealthy culture.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you feel like this group's against this group. And why do we even have groups? What's going on here? Like, why did this seemingly group of people hate me? And right. They're not following me anywhere.
That doesn't happen in church, does it?
What's happening here?
Yeah, sure it does.
We've got a few things we're going to talk about today.
Right.
We've got about 4. I think we're going to list and just chat through. And if you've got any advice or some things that you've been through, maybe you've led a church through an unhealthy season, put that in the comments. We'd love to hear about it. But we're going to talk through them. Let's dive right into number 1. We'll just make a blanket statement real quick. Yep. We believe this. We said it again, healthy churches grow, but healthy leaders build healthy churches.
That's right.
So at first, let's say, look in the mirror.
Always.
Make sure you are healthy.
That's right.
Make sure your spirit is good.
That's good.
Right?
Absolutely.
And as a pastor, that's hugely important.
It has to be. I think if you're gonna talk about the culture of the church and why it's this way, they'll even tell you in any organization, you come in and after 2 years, if there's still problems, those are your problems that you have invested or you have. It's something going on with you and not the organization.
Yeah.
So you have to start with you, the leader, me, the leader.
Starts there, right?
Has to.
Flows from
and so that in the same way that negative can happen, positive can happen. So we're saying that if you're healthy here as the lead, then you can actually produce a healthy organization, a healthy church. But if it's not healthy here, it's going to be difficult to bring health into an organization. So we're going to dive into some of the things that actually bring health, birth health, create
Yeah.
health in an organization. And at the top of the list, always will be, always has been, is the area of communication. It has
Okay.
to be communicating.
Communicating what?
Yeah, communicating the values of your church all the way down to every hallway, every person, everyone who comes to the campus, everyone who comes to your organization, like communicating that this is who we are. This is how we handle specific things.
Yeah.
This is how we approach culture, worldly culture versus godly culture. What are we going to do that your opinion doesn't trump God's word? Like all just communicating and clarifying the values of the church is where you have to start to build health.
Yeah. Well, it's important. You don't even know how to approach a situation, or you're going to approach it how someone in your church is going to approach it however they feel like they need to if you've not defined it.
Right.
Right? It's like putting someone in charge of a ministry and letting them do whatever they want. Well, they're going to do whatever they want, right?
That's
Because
right.
you didn't define
There's
anything
no
for them.
communication, right?
There's no value set in place. There's no expectation. So you're going to
That's right.
get whatever they want to give you.
Sure.
It may not be what you want, but you didn't inspect anything. You didn't
Right.
give them any expectations.
There was
So-
no conversation about this is how we deal with people who are late in the ministry. We don't berate them. We talk them through. We have grace here. We
just
have
redefine.
exactly. When there's a lack of communication, poor communication is the opposite of great communication. When there's a poor
Yeah,
communication,
you can't get mad at a volunteer
If they
for
don't
not
know.
doing something that you never clearly
never
laid out.
shed the light on, never told them this is how we do it. This is the way we approach these issues in culture.
Yeah.
And so they're at the mercy of doing it however they feel like they need to do it versus saying, no, this is how we handle these types of issues in our church. This is how. There you go.
How do you communicate that? Do you weave it through your messages regularly?
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's all the above. I think it's got to come from the platform. It's got to come from the pulpit. It's got to come from the message conversation.
Sure.
But I think it needs to be when you're onboarding volunteers instead of it being, after they made a mistake. Oh, now they know. How about before they make the mistake? You've given them a great onboarding process where you've said, this is how we deal with this. This is what we expect from you. This is where all of those communication bullet points of, how we do ministry, why we do ministry this way. I think onboarding has to be in the onboarding. And then when there's an issue, modeling it. This is how we model this. This is how we deal with this by modeling it and communicating it.
I'm a part of a monthly team meeting with an organization, and at the beginning of that team meeting, they always say, "Hey, before we start our meeting today, we're going to reiterate our team values."
It's good.
And they just list them out, and maybe they'll pick one of them and say, "Hey, here's where we're really doing good.
It's good.
We're doing good at this."
I think churches that put them on their walls. I think churches that puts them in their bulletins or puts them on their website. I mean, putting them everywhere. The Bible tells us to tell our kids by putting it on our hands and our tassels. Put it everywhere. Like let them see when we lay down and wake up. Like they always know what we stand for. So I think putting it around your facility just helps people go, this is who we are and this is why we do this. So right at the top is communicating and clarifying the church's values creates, and again, it creates the conversation. This is how we do it. This is how we approach this.
If you don't have a list of values for your church, you don't
Step
have to
one.
recreate their will. If you don't have in your head, like, what does that even look like? Dig around on some websites, some church websites, and look at what they've written out, and maybe that'll trigger something for you. Ask the Holy Spirit to help you, and look at your church and say, hey, we value these things as a church. List them out. Don't make it super long. Make it 6 or 7 things or less, and just reiterate those. Drive them home. Repeat them often, and make sure it's something your people can repeat.
That's right. So if we're talking about the leader, make sure that those values and that you're bringing clarity to, those values line up with the Word of God. That's just important.
Oh, sure.
I mean, that sounds like it should be, but in today's culture, we're bringing in worldly values into the church.
Right.
Like make sure those values are rooted in the Word of God. But
You've got
clarify it.
scripture to back it up.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think another thing so if we're going to communicate those clarified values and put them everywhere in the sermon and the trainings and on the walls, I think the very next thing that we got to do in creating healthy culture is remove some of the stuff that's not healthy.
That kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking at a plant and something's dying on it, you're supposed to prune it.
You're going to prune it.
Take it off.
Of course, we know that Christ talked about pruning, and that's an important part of the
husbandry,
faith.
right?
That's right. So I think removing things, you can call them toxins, you can call them things that are irritants, but I think removing things out of the organization that are unhealthy. Because if you keep unhealthy things with unhealthy, the bad apple spoils the rest of the
unhealthy
bunch.
things. So that's like
right.
people,
Yeah, could be.
a ministry,
Could be.
you name it.
Yeah,
Like, you address it head on.
Yeah, it could be somebody in your church who's living in sin, and you just
Okay.
choose. It could be a leader, and I think that's where we struggle, and that's a difficult thing.
So we don't like to do that.
Exactly.
Part, right?
Oh yeah, he's one of our higher level leaders, and he's struggling, but I don't want to remove him because in the whole ministry,
Yeah.
the longer he stays in, the longer she stays in, the greater the toxicity that gets into the organization.
It's poison.
So I heard, I think it was Dr. Henry Cloud that said, just pull the teeth. You're just going to have to pull the teeth. We don't like going to the dentist because it's painful.
Yeah.
But if we keep that infection in the mouth, it'll kill us.
Spreads to the whole body.
Yeah, it'll kill us. So
literally.
So we got to remove toxins and identifying in the area, in the organization, in the church, that this ministry is maybe pulling too many resources than what it's actually pulling in or providing back. It could be a person, could be or it could be just a sin, unconfessed sin in an organization and in a person's life. Obviously, will cause some incredible.
I've seen it in a larger church. They still did Sunday school, and there was a person who was put in charge of this class, and they created their own little thing. But this person actually had an issue with the pastor that went unchecked, and they didn't address it, and they were afraid to deal with it. But this person would come in, lead their rather large Sunday school class, and everyone in the class knew this because they watched it happen week after week. They would pack up their stuff, get in the car, and go home and not stay for church.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because they had this issue with the pastor, and it was this toxic thing, and it was just trickling through, and other people were starting to have issues, and like, they don't have an issue. They just have their issue.
Yes.
Like, they're just picking up on it, right? And it's just creating this poison, but it went unchecked for years and years and years. And this person was just allowed to do their thing.
Sure.
Blew my mind.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
I'll tell you why it's so difficult in our context as churches 200 and under is because we've said this.
Any change like that.
Sure. But specifically for us, it would be, and we've said this in other episodes, and that is because it's extremely personal, because it's a smaller environment. Everyone knows, everyone sees it.
Yeah.
So I get it.
It's not like you can hide it.
Exactly. And I've been a part of a mega church where you can just kind of cut, move on, and nobody even notices. Oh, it's a different person, different face.
Yeah.
In our context, it's harder because we know everyone.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it any less important. We still have to go and have that conversation and remove and hold people accountable. And these are the values we said. I know for a fact in our volunteer context, we actually have a leadership guideline. This is how we're going to live as leaders. Okay. Again, that's not for the whole congregation because we know people are coming in at different levels.
Right.
But if you're going to be in a leadership conversation, we have a kind of a code of conduct.
Yeah, I love that.
And if that's not being held, then we're going to hold you accountable to that.
So it's similar to our processes episode. If you didn't check out our system and processes, that was phenomenal. But we said the same thing. If you lay out a system or process, or you lay out an expectation, then when you go to that person or that ministry to address a problem, you're not necessarily saying, you're a bad apple. You're a bad person.
Exactly.
You're saying, hey, we have a standard.
Yeah. I'm not picking on you.
I'm just saying, as a leader, we rise to this level in this area.
Yes.
And I'm your pastor. Yeah. And I'm supposed to pastor you. And part of that is taking the rod of correction sometime and bringing you back, right? And saying, hey, we can do better, bud. Yes. We can do better because God's got, you can, right? And I want to help you. And we're going to grow through this together.
Right.
And if they love you and they respect you as pastor, which they should, especially through a season like that, if done right and in love, man, they're going to grow. They're going to come up to that level. You're calling them up, you're calling them higher to that standard, to that expectation. And you're saying, but this is where we all live.
Right.
I'm not saying only you have to live to this level.
Right.
I'm striving to live at this level in this area, and I want you to as well.
Yeah,
this is our standard.
Sure.
And you're not telling them that they're bad. You're just saying we could do better.
Yes. And having that crucial conversation is important because it could turn into, well, no one addresses anything at this church, and therefore the unhealthy environment comes in and the culture starts to set that, well, they don't talk about it.
This is just how we do.
We don't talk about Bruno. Yeah. We don't talk about stuff, right?
Yeah.
So because we don't talk about him,
in the walls.
Stuff can happen, and unhealthy starts to set in, and that starts with us as the leaders approaching that. I think another thing that creates, or how we deal with some unhealthy stuff, or however we want to approach this, is when a church doesn't follow through with what they said they're going to do. So they're in front of the platform,
Okay.
We cast these incredible visions sometimes.
Yeah, Vision
Hey,
Sunday,
yeah,
right?
we're gonna do this. We're gonna do.
Yeah.
We're all about missions, and we're all about, the next gen, and we're all about all these things. Yet there's no follow through with that. That creates a very unhealthy culture that I can step up and say something, but nothing happens after I say that.
Yeah.
And that lack of follow through starts to become this unfulfilled expectations in the body.
Ooh.
And that starts
You
with
don't wanna
you, the
create
leader.
that culture.
That's right. But I've seen it. I've been a part of it, and I've been the cause of it. And so I've learned from my mistakes and saying, if I'm going to do it.
When pastor says,
Yeah.
don't
Well,
worry,
he doesn't do it. Yeah, exactly.
we're not going to actually do that.
So how do we cure that? Well, we have to be, as leads, when we say something, we're going to do it. When we say we're raising money for kids, we're going to spend it on
where
the kids.
part of that comes from, I think, is there's been no real thought or thinking through, praying about what's about to be said when you step up into a pulpit. So maybe in a moment you go, well, right now I really feel like we're going to start, and you fill in the blank and you say it, but you didn't actually create a plan for that.
Right.
You didn't pray through about that. Like, you didn't ask God to lay this plan. Like, God didn't give you this vision and a plan to make it happen and then step up and present it. It was more like we're gonna, and just as soon as it came out, you forgot about it.
That's true.
There was no plan in place to actually implement this.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't actually set up a giving fund for missions. We didn't actually put someone in charge of planning a mission trip.
Right.
We didn't actually have a next gen ministry to build or a vision for it. We just thought it might be a cool idea, but we didn't have a vision for it.
Or worse, we saw the church down the road doing it, so we just thought
we thought we'd really,
which we've talked about.
We'd start a food pantry.
Exactly.
And
that all becomes, I didn't do it. I said it and we didn't do it. And when we create those kind of cultures, people start to go, well, this
can't trust you, right?
We can't. There it is. Trust goes out the window. When trust goes out the window, it's time to move on. So I think that creates very unhealthy environment when I get up there and say something and I don't do it. I don't follow through. Yeah, that's dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
I think when we go into this last conversation is when we talk about just the differences that exist when you're pulling together people of different ethnic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, unsaved, saved, and we're pulling them all in, and we're trying to do ministry with a varied different personalities.
Yeah.
Like not acknowledging that this is a conglomeration of a bunch of different people and expecting everyone to be like me, expecting everyone to be the same. I think approaching that creates this very unhealthy tone in ministry that you have to be like me and I have to be like you.
You have to change.
Exactly. It's you. You're the problem. You have to change because you're not like me. Versus going, you know what? The body is very eclectic, and there are people with different gifts and different backgrounds and different approaches and experiences.
Yeah,
and once I embrace that instead of fight that, man, then people can begin to trust me again with ministry. Yeah,
I was a part of a church. Well, my dad pastored it for a little while. He's brought in to kind of try to revitalize a church. It was a bunch of old, I'll just say what it was, a bunch of old white people in a community that was changing drastically to Hispanic in the Houston area. I mean, overnight, just like this is where it's going. But the church was just these people that drove in and this is where we attend and we're comfortable. And they were very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening, but were unwilling to be led through that. We hired an associate pastor who was Hispanic and spoke the language and knew the culture. And he was phenomenal, but the church didn't want to accept the change happening. It was really weird.
Yeah.
The community was growing. The church was dying for obvious reasons. They didn't love the community. They didn't want to change. And long story short, the church had to close its doors and it was sold to another church who I guess was that culture. And man, the church
took off again.
And here we go because we're willing to go there and we're ready to go. And not expecting. What were they expecting?
Right.
Were they expecting like, oh no, it'll change and
the expectation is I am me and you have to come.
Y'all gotta like our thing.
You gotta like me.
Yeah.
And that's again an unhealthy approach. And I love that we started off with starts here at the lead. And if they're healthy, then the church will be healthy. That is where the unhealthy in the church is. The lead has a problem with others that are different.
Man, know your audience, right?
Let's call it what it is. Dealing with racism. We said that.
Absolutely.
Sin, toxin, whatever it is. removing that stuff. But I think when you approach it with this opening heart that God's going to bring different people and they're going to be different than me. That's a beautiful thing that God does versus everybody looks like me, sounds like me, smells like me, dresses like me. I think that creates an unhealthy. I think it's an unhealthy.
That is an unhealthy
culture.
church.
They don't see it as unhealthy because like, oh, I don't have any conflict in my church because everybody looks like
We're all
me.
very comfortable.
I find that as very unhealthy when I walk into a context and I know the neighborhood. I went to the Walmart and I'm like, this church doesn't reflect its community. That's an unhealthy conversation. That's an unhealthy thing happening in that church.
Wow.
And
I never thought about that. Go to your Walmart. Does your church look like your Walmart?
Does your church look like your community? And if it doesn't, there could be some unhealthy things because we despise. That's what it is. It's a despising of people who are different. We got to deal with that. That is a hard issue, and we got to put that before the Lord because that has no place in the kingdom. And so we have to lay that stuff down. And that's what creates unhealthy culture. And a person walks in a church and thinks that's how the church is everywhere.
Yeah,
and it's just that culture.
Course.
Yeah. So you make our jobs hard. You make your neighbor's job hard. You know, let's embrace that and be like, you know what? Let's put the mirror up and say there's some stuff going on, and I need to deal with it if I want to lead a healthy organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. That's where we are.
Is that where we're at?
That's where we're at, man.
Those are our things.
Those are our things.
You could go as deep into those as you want. We talked about things like gossip. We've seen gossip in church destroy a church. Don't like what the pastor's doing, so you start a militia over here, against him, and a support, not a support group, but this campaign, to make sure pastor doesn't have his way here. And man, deal with that stuff. If you see it, God's giving you discernment. Look at your congregation. You know them.
Be bold.
You see things that are happening that you're probably just not comfortable addressing. Yeah.
How do we know
the
that?
Size of your church?
How do we know that? Because I've been there. I've been there where I'm like, I don't want to deal with this because it's going to cause too much issues and waves, and it's going to make it's going to be uncomfortable.
No, I've seen God take care of some stuff for us.
Oh, bro, yes.
We had a small group that was turned into a bash the pastor and his family group. We didn't actually know it right away. It kind of started. We were like, oh, there's something with these people.
Yeah.
Oh, well, all these people go to the same life group. Oh, there's a common thread here. What's going on? Come to find out, that's basically what the life group was. And some stuff happened, and God took care of it, and a family left, and which took all the families, and we were like, cool.
Yeah.
We started down that trek, but God kind of was like, okay, you see it, you deal with it. This is my church. Yep. He took care of it, and now we get
so nervous as pastors when pruning takes place.
Yeah,
when that's a natural part.
It's not yours to like. We said it in the last episode. This is God's.
Yes,
this is God's church.
That's right.
You're an under shepherd.
We're stewards of this, man.
If you don't think God's got this, then
that's right.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna build healthy, we got to start here. Be healthy in here. Don't be so wrapped up in insecurities. I've been down that road so many times.
Oh man,
letting that all lay down. But I gotta be willing to deal with the unhealthy stuff in my church.
Yeah,
because if I don't deal with it, that's right.
Do it quick. Be done.
There are two things. I'll just say this as we wrap this episode up. I'll say there are two things, indicators for me.
Okay.
And so I debated on whether we're going to do this in this episode or another episode. But this has been the indicators for me. If I have found that I am frustrated as the lead, it's usually an indicator that I haven't done enough planning in the organization. I haven't done enough training.
Okay.
I'm frustrated with my volunteers. They're not taking the trash out. And I told them to take the trash out. Well, did I tell them in a very clear way to take the trash out? Did I even
the frequency
exactly, or did I say it one time in an obscure
tell them where
message?
to find the trash bags?
Exactly. I didn't give them the keys to the closet to get it. So I found that when I'm frustrated, talking about healthy things, when I'm frustrated, it's usually because I've not planned and I've not trained enough people in enough way. Mm-hmm. But if I find that I'm tired and fatigued, talking about being healthy, that's a sign of unhealth. If I'm always tired all the time,
go to the doctor.
Then if I'm fatigued, then here's what I've discovered, that I've not done enough recruiting. I've not done enough net casting and bringing people along and equipping
You're doing it alone.
the team. I'm doing it by myself, right? And I have found myself in ministry going, man, I am so exhausted. I look around and I'm like, I'm the only one here late at night doing this. I could easily invite people on a journey with me and be a part of that, but I don't. And so I encourage you, like if you're dealing with this, those are two just really important key indicators for me. Frustration. If it's in my heart, it's in the volunteer's heart. If I'm fatigued, if I'm tired, I'm telling you, my volunteers are wiped out Because
Sure.
the other phrase is, if there's a sniffle in the staff, there's an outbreak in the volunteer system.
Wow.
And so that's why we say if we're healthy, then they're healthy. So I look at those two indicators, frustration and fatigued.
Yeah.
And I try to measure some
Yeah,
stuff by
that
that.
comes back to the healthy leaders build
Yes.
healthy churches.
Yes.
So look at yourself, start there, go down from there, look at your church as a whole.
Absolutely.
Look at these things. Hope this was helpful to you, inspiring. Hopefully you don't have an unhealthy church. You will at some point find some unhealth in your church. It's just people come with
That's right.
unhealthy things, right? We
That's
are
right.
born with
We're
a sin
attracting.
nature.
Yeah, that's right. It's
It
part
just
of it.
happens. So let this be some help to you. Ask Holy Spirit to help you. We're praying for you. We believe in you. God's called you to lead
Amen.
his people well and to do it healthily. Healthily? That's a word.
Sure.
right?
We just made it up. Healthy.
I like it. So that's it. This episode. Hope you liked what you heard. Share it with somebody who can benefit as well. Rate us, review us, comment if you're on YouTube. We'd love to engage in conversation with you. Some things you've done to create a healthy church culture, church family in your church. That's it.
Amen.
Episode
That's
9.
good.
We'll see you.
Adios.
We have one more episode to go. Episode 10. We're going to be talking about healthy church. Not healthy church. Healthy pastor family. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're talking about healthy pastor family. What does it look like to lead your family and your church well?
That's
When to know where to put more weight and more time, and like how do you make sure you got kids who actually love Jesus when they grow old, right? And love the
important.
church. You know, you have to have that. So how can we do some practical stuff we're going to look at? So see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us today at Hello Church Podcast.